welcome back to part 4 of our webinar series on the topic of potty training with Dr. Amanda Thompson. I am so excited about this last topic. This is one that was a real hard subject for our family to get at the end. And so I'm really excited to hear everything that Amanda has to say on this subject. It's bowel movement training. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Amanda.
Thank you. So bowel training is going to be very similar to the previous potty training for pee or urine training. So if you want to go back to the data sheet, and if you did it early on, or you could redo it, you could do them separately. But about half the time, if you actually are doing the potty training, it's really difficult to teach someone to pee and not poop if they have to go. And so about half the time you will actually inadvertently teach bowel training. And so at the very beginning, whenever you're doing your data sheet and you're writing down 7 a.m., they were soiled, they were really wet, and then you averaged out your time, you worked on the urination, and you happen to maybe hit the bowel movements. If you did not, this is going to be key, and you can tag them together if you want, but sometimes it's a little bit more work. So most of the time, if you think about infants or newborns, you can kind of tell when the baby is going to have a bowel movement. The newborn is going to eat, then they're going to poop, and so it's very systemic. There's something called a gastric colic reflex. It happens every 3 hours, and all of us, it's just as we get a little bit older, we have the ability to hold it. The key is diet. If you haven't addressed any of the constipation issues or fluid intake issues, then this is going to be unsuccessful for a little while. If you cannot predict the bowel movements, then it's going to be difficult. So then you have to think about, okay, you have different types of people. You have people that are chronically constipated, and they may poop every once a week or once every 2 or 3 days, but ideally everyone's pooping 2 times a day is the goal. Adults as well. So you have your morning poopers, so they wake up, they poop. Sometimes as adults we need coffee or some sort of stimulant, and we have a bowel movement. Then you have your after they eat a meal poopers. Then you have your evening poopers. And so you don't have to think about which category you fall in, but it's kind of interesting to see the different people and different kids that you can kind of predict when someone's going to have a bowel movement. The younger they are, it's a little bit more difficult, but usually there's some telltale signs. So you want to get your nose involved, and if they start passing gas beforehand, that's going to be your trigger that they might have a bowel movement. So let's say I'm training a 4-year-old or 5-year-old, pre-school age, because typically once they're in school, it's a little bit more difficult, and some kids don't like to poop at school at all. And so it makes it a little bit more challenging. So let's say it's a preschool age, or you're homeschooling the child. So they get up in the morning, they might drink a little bit, and then they eat, and then they poop within 30 minutes after they eat. Great, that they're a morning pooper. But some kids, if they don't poop in the morning, they might poop, let's say 30 minutes after they get home. If they've been out and about, they might poop 30 minutes after they get home. Some kids have no control, but you can kind of sense when it's going to happen. So that data sheet's going to be key. So as long as you change nothing else, you can semi-predict when they're going to have a bowel movement. So it won't be as often as pee training. So it's not going to be your every hour and a half. It might be simple enough that you can, if you have no idea, what I tell my adults is, every time you eat, about 10 to 20 minutes after you eat, you want to sit on the toilet, and I'm going to teach you how to poop in a second, but you want to try to have a bowel movement, and what you're doing is trying to stimulate that gastric colic reflex to happen. So if every 10 to 20 minutes after you go to the bathroom, or after you eat, you're trying to go to the bathroom, nothing's happening, you want to get those telltale signs. And let's say they're starting to have a little bit of gas, you put them on the toilet, and you want them to have a bowel movement. Again, it's going to kind of go hand in hand sometimes with peeing, because it's really difficult to control one sphincter, not the other. I'm going to teach you a couple different ways to teach them to go to the bathroom, but I'm going to back this up. And so key is constipation. If they are not constipated, then the key is you want their knees above their hips. Let me get this a little bit further back. Knees above hips. So if you need a squatty potty, actually this chair is going to be great. You want a squatty potty. Get those knees above your hips. Knees above hips. So squatty potty elevates the feet. You want to lean forward. So elbows on your knees. And then you actually want to blow out. You want to increase the pressure in your tummy and blow out. If they hold their breath, then you're actually going to contract your pelvic floor, and it's going to be counterproductive for anything that you want to do. So you want to try to get them to push 3 or 4 times. Sometimes if you sit in front of them and do it with them, they'll try to mimic you. It depends on communication. But sometimes kids, once you are learning, or depending on age, you can kind of see their poop face, especially the older they get, they kind of go hide a little bit. And then they have a typical poop face. They get really kind of, and sometimes they turn red. As long as constipation is an issue or severe diarrhea isn't an issue, you can kind of predict when the bowel movements are going to happen. If constipation is an issue, which I'm going to show you a technique I do for my babies that are constipated and even my adults that come in. Then the question is, how do you know you're constipated? So this is a standardized, it's not a standardized form, but it is a standardized tool. It's going to be, is it backwards? If you Google the Bristol stool chart, this is very common. There's actually a kid version that has food on there that you can judge it based on food. It's kind of entertaining. But basically type 1 is constipation. Type 2 is basically constipation. You want anywhere from 3 to 5, preferably 4. 4 is soft, like a banana, long and soft like a banana with no straining to poop. And that's your ideal bowel movement. Let's say we are not getting that and we are really struggling with relaxing our tummy. No matter the age, even adults, it's really, you want to lay them down. And if they're doing it on themselves, it's one thing. But basically, you want to take one hand. You want to go from the right hip up, across, and down to the left hip. And you want a circle movement, okay? Circle around. And then you want to go down 1, 2, 3. If they're a baby or a very young child, you can bring their feet up and have them almost like the happy baby. You want to bring their knees up like this. So, right, across, circle down. And then straight down. So 3 times this way, 3 times this way. 3 times this way, 3 times this way. So just to make it easy, do 3, 3, 3, 3, and then you can pump the legs 1, 2, 3. If they're little. If they're not, you don't really have to do it. Sometimes it helps to do it, especially if their tummy really hurts, but especially like let's say they eat a meal right before you want to have a bowel movement, go and do that. You could do it for 5 minutes if they'll let you. But key is summary for bowel movements. Try to predict their bowel movements, whether it's based on their food schedule or based on your data sheet. They typically will have a bowel movement at certain times throughout the day. If they don't, if they are sporadic poopers, try to keep your eyes, your ears, and your nose available for any key markers that they're going to have a bowel movement. But there might be other things involved that we need to address before the actual bowel training. So now I've taught you how to poop, what poop should look like, banana, soft banana, and easy to pass. And make sure they're breathing out when they have a bowel movement. It's going to help relax. And sometimes you can get them to relax here whenever they're on the toilet, kind of stroke their head, especially if they're constipated. And if they are constipated, try to work on the tummy massage. You could even Google or YouTube infant massage for constipation. And the videos are with babies, like newborn infants. but it's the same concept for everyone, even adults. So even your teenage kids and your 20-year-olds that are not completely potty trained, you can address with this. So without further ado, that's bowel training.